Hello guys, my name is SVB and we're back for another VOD review. Today we're going to be looking at Weemat, who's playing a bit of main tank on the control map Lijiang Tower. And we're going to have a few different things to talk about today because Weemat plays three different main tanks in this video: Rein, Orisa and Winston. I'm going to try and not spend too much time on the Orisa because I've just done an Orisa video, and I think a lot of the same things apply. But I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of, particularly with the Rein play, and then at the end a little bit of Winston play. So Weemat's team here, this goes to all three maps, and Weemat's team loses with just one little key play at the end that loses his team the game. So let's get into it and see what happened. And already I think this is where Weemat's first mistake comes in. And I think you'll see this as a recurring theme on this map in particular, is that there's a lot of positional errors specific to Rein on this map. So Weemat makes the decision to go here, and I'm going to suggest that in the future they go to the other side. So here I've got a top-down view of Lijiang Tower, and we're on this third map here. So I'm just going to zoom in and show you where Weemat should be ideally. So they're coming from these spawn doors here. And ideally, if you're playing Rein, you want to be holding this area here. And the reason for that is this particular room is a much more enclosed area. And that suits Rein because his shield is basically going to hold this space completely. If you go in this area, there's just too much for you to block. There's too many angles where the enemy can come in from. And it's not really ideal for Rein because, like I said, there's too many angles for him to block. So I think Weemat should have gone for this angle here. Would have been a better decision for his team. They can all look through here, this gap. And if the enemy team does come on the point, then you can hold this angle. And you can look down the other team from this way. So that's the sort of positioning error specific to Rein. So we'll see why I was saying that, because as we get into this fight, you can see Weemat is in a little bit, they're unsure where they should be stood. Ideally, you should actually be holding either this here or this, just because again this covers the length of the Rein shield. Stood back here, you're kind of a little bit exposed. There's too many angles for the enemy team to take. And as we play the clip, you'll see what happens. Weemat's already a little bit disorientated. The Diva's diving him, the Pharah's in the sky here. And already you can see that this fight is going to get a little bit disjointed. And as I play it out, you should be able to see that occur. So quickly, Weemat goes down to 300 HP. And now I'm going to point out the sort of second mistake that also Weemat unfortunately makes a couple times on this map. And that's that they're trapped inside this Winston bubble. And when you're in a Winston bubble, for anybody who doesn't know, most healers can't go through the bubble. So the only healer that can go through the bubble is Mercy, and also if your Zen has an orb on you. But a Lucio's aura, as you can see the edges of this Lucio aura here, if he's inside the bubble he can heal you, but if he's outside the bubble the aura won't come through. Similarly, the Moira is going to have a hard time coming through here. So when you're in a bubble as Rein or as any hero, the first thing you need to do is get out. So unfortunately Weemat takes a little bit of time getting out. And if I just take this clip back 1 second, you'll see that as the fight starts, he starts getting pressured from the right hand side. There's a Hanzo here. You can just see the faint edges of a Hanzo arrow. So there's a Hanzo hitting him from this side. Again, that's probably why you don't want to be in this open area as Rein, because it's, like I said, there's too many angles. So he goes down to low HP. The Winston's pressuring him, the Diva's pressuring him, and the Hanzo's pressuring him from the right. Because he's in the bubble, his teammate can't heal him really, and he dies very quickly. The fight goes on without Weemat. They spawn, they try and speed back onto the point, and you'll see here that the almost identical thing occurs. So Weemat pauses for a second, wondering if they should go in or not. I think they make the decision that they should, and at this point the fight is probably still winnable, and certainly you're not losing anything by going in at 0-0. If the capture point is still contested and nobody's claimed territory of it, and you can see here that there's a couple teammates around, there's a Lucio aura you can see here, so this fight is still winnable potentially. So it's worth going in, but Weemat walks straight into the Winston bubble, meaning that now his team is cut off from helping him, And once again, the sort of similar thing happens. Weemat gets dove on. They're a bit too focused on swinging, and by the time they put their shield up, their HP is too low, and they die very quickly. So Weemat respawns, they come in with their team, and they're holding their shield up to protect their team, but this is partly his team's fault, and partly their own fault. What you can see here, the McCree's in front of the shield, the Lucia's in front of the shield. So if, as a Rein, you see that happening, you need to try and adjust your angle. You need to go and cover your McCree. So going on this right side is not really helpful. You need to hold this angle for the McCree, and I'm just going to show you from the top down. Weemat is here, pushing this direction, but his McCree is pushing this direction. So in this scenario, you need to go around here and try and maybe hold this angle, because again, your shield covers this nicely. The enemy team can't shoot from there. The only option is to come over the top, and that's much preferable for your McCree, because there is a Pharah roaming around, but the McCree has nice lines there for her. So I'll play the clip. The fight breaks out. The McCree gets a nice kill on the Hanzo initially. Weemat pushes forward, but again here they're maybe a little bit too focused on swinging, because the rest of their team is behind them and is now without a shield. But that's an easy mistake to make. Reins at all levels make this mistake. I make this mistake sometimes. Tunneling in and swinging too much definitely can cost your team, because they're without a shield. And although Rein does a lot of damage, you should be focusing on shielding as much as you're trying to kill people. So you see here the McCree high noons behind Weemat, but he gets a nice kill on the Pharah on the top here. Again, Weemat could have been there to shield his McCree, but he does alright without him. The D.Va tries to die the McCree, but it's too late. And again, Weemat here is a little bit lost, right? Their shield is shielding nobody. At this point, they're only really shielding themselves. The rest of their team is here. So in this scenario, they need to be holding this kind of angle. One sec, let me just... So you need to hold this kind of angle, or this angle here, around the corner. So at this point, they're not really shielding their team. So as Rein, just try and keep an awareness. It's tough when the fight breaks out, but just try and keep an awareness of where your team is going. Sometimes you want to lead your team, but particularly in games or in ranks where people are playing very split up and they're not kind of coming behind you, it becomes your responsibility to try and go with them, try and follow them. It's not ideal, but it's better than just doing your own thing. So Weemat pushes forward, they try and kill the Ana, but she's being pocketed by the Mercy. The Coalescence does a nice job. Here's a nice charge coming in, and then another nice fire strike going to come in a second. So that part is very good. The projectile aim was very good there, and essentially when you're charging as Rein, you are a projectile. You need to think of yourself as a very slow moving projectile if you want to hit those shots. But now, again, a positioning error specific to Rein is that Weemat decides to stay really far back here while the rest of their team is pushing out. And I suggest in this case you need to be pushing all the way to the door, because again, as Rein, your shield will cover this entire angle if you hold it here, whereas if you're holding back here, you give the enemy teams all this room to come in, all these angles to come in. But if you're holding here, there's only two places for them to go: come through you or go around the side. Most people don't go this side route just because it's neglected, and people kind of tend to tunnel and they always want to come down this way. So if you're holding this angle as Rein, you make a nice little window for your team to shoot through, and when the enemy team does pressure you, you can back up quite easily. So Weemat doesn't hold that angle, they hang back, and as a consequence the enemy team comes in for free. And now here's another mistake that I would call a sort of cardinal sin of Rein play, and that's wasting your shield. So you see that all while this fight is going on, Weemat's holding their shield up, and now it's down to 769 HP. And I just want to encourage Weemat and anybody watching who's playing Rein is think about when you're shielding and why you're shielding and who you're shielding. At this point, the enemy team is just poking. They're just poking. They're not potentially going to kill anybody. If the fight hasn't broken out and you're playing Rein, you don't want to hold your shield up, because all that's going to happen is your shield's going to get cracked, and then when the actual fight does break out, you're not going to have enough shield. So in this scenario, while the enemy team is regrouping, they're trying to push in through the door, you should be pushed up against this side here and just peeking back and forth. You should just be peeking, looking, seeing what's happening. Are they coming? Throw a fire strike out. But there's no need to hold your shield out. The only reason you would hold your shield in this case is if the enemy team has a widow and you're afraid that they might, just randomly pick one of your teammates. But in this case, we know their comp. Their DPS are Pharah and Soldier, and neither of them are really going to one-shot your team. So if you just press up against this wall, watch for when they come, and then hold your shield up, you'll save yourself the shield, and you'll see what happens in a second, because Weemat's shield is already quite low. So they do put it down for a little bit, and it does charge, but again, when the soldier starts poking, Weemat puts their shield back up. Again, there's no need here. The shield's going to go up in a second. There's no need. The soldier isn't going to kill anyone. They're just shooting their little 2 damage shots. Nobody's going to die. And again, the shield starts going down, going down, going down. And by the time, so now the enemy team is pushing in. You can see here they're actually coming close now. And Weemat's shield is at 910. So you're going to see now the consequence of not having your shield fully charged. So the fight starts again. And Weemat is suddenly taken by surprise from a Pharah barraging from above. They try to react and hold their barrier up, but you see how quickly it breaks because it was only at 700 HP. If I just take it back 1 frame. So by the time Weemat holds their shield up, it's at 856. The Pharah turns and starts barraging Weemat. It breaks within a second, and now Weemat goes down to 20 HP. Their healer tries to keep them alive, but they can't save them. In a panic, Weemat tries to shatter, dies, loses the shatter. So in that scenario, when all this poking was going on, if Weemat had just let their shield charge all the way, 1600 now, if they just let their shield charge and stayed here, wait for the enemy team to actually come in, they would have been much better equipped for when the barrage comes in. But instead, they take too much poke damage. So by the time the barrage does begin, their shield doesn't last very long. At 2000 HP, the shield would have probably taken most of that barrage, and Weemat may well have lived. They could have gotten a good shatter off, but instead the shield dies, the team dies, and this fight gets lost quite quickly. So as his team respawns, Weemat now is doing the right thing. You can see here they're not holding their shield up, they're just peeking, they're just waiting, fire striking. This is what you should be doing. While you're waiting for your team to group, or you're waiting for the fight to start, there's no need to waste your shield. Eventually the fight does break out, and Weemat moves in. But again, we're going to see here a bit of uncertainty. I think Weemat is more than anything uncertain where they should be going, because you can see again some of their team has gone this way, some of their team is going this way, and they're kind of holding an angle where they're looking around. They're not really sure where they should be. They're not sure where the Pharah is firing from. His McCree does land a nice Deadeye here, and his Reaper gets a kill on the Mercy with his Death Blossom. But you're going to see here that again, Weemat is walking into the Winston bubble, and this is a bad call. You're again isolating yourself from heals, and you might just have heard the start of the sound cue for a soldier tack visor off in the high ground. And thankfully for Weemat, his Lucio is also in the Winston bubble when this sound barrier goes off. If he wasn't, the Winston bubble would cut the sound barrier off and Weemat wouldn't get any of the sound barrier. But you can see that the Reaper doesn't get any sound barrier because they're outside the bubble. So this is partly the Lucio's mistake. I'm not sure if the Lucio's aware that they're all in the bubble and they can only protect the Moira, the Rein, and themselves, or if the Lucio just accidentally breaks the beat and covers only 3 of their teammates. But either way, that's again a sort of reason you don't want to be in the bubble. And now Weemat starts trying to shield attack visor. Obviously that's what you would do, but I think they're again a little bit unsure what angle they should be holding with their shield. They're kind of looking around. Again, they're protecting their Lucio, to be fair, but I'll just show you from the top down what a better approach would be. So similar to what I said in my Orisa video, when you are shielding as a Rein or as any shield tank, so Orisa or Rein, you need to think about angles of your shields. What are you protecting? So the soldier is on the high ground, and they have access to everything basically. They can see in all directions. So as a Rein, you have to cover the optimal angle for your team. So Weemat is kind of looking in this direction, and that's not ideal because the soldier can still shoot quite a lot of distance all around you. I would suggest if there is a soldier on the high ground or any sort of threat, maybe a McCree high nooning, that a better angle is this one here. There's the pillar on point C on this point, and you got this cover here. So if you hold this angle, your Rein shield will cover almost the entirety of this nook here. Your team can stand anywhere in this area roughly because the shield will block. And if they're in danger, they can always hide around this corner, they can hide around the barrier here. So that's one good angle. Another good angle, if your team, depending on how far back your team is, you can hold this angle. So again, your team has the benefit of hiding behind this cover or your shield. So those are just some things to bear in mind. Again, when you see a threat from a high ground, just think about your angles. Think about what are the best angles to cover. And that's something that comes with practice and understanding every map. So I'll let the fight run out. Two of Weemat's teammates do die to the attack visor, but that's mostly their own fault for their own poor positioning. Weemat lands a nice charge on the D.Va. But unfortunately what you're going to see happen is that although Weemat's team look like they're winning the fight, the fight's going to turn here. And partly that's because Weemat fails to see that their HP is dropping very low. And what's going to happen now is that the Winston who's jumped in the air is going to pressure Weemat. He misses his charge. That happens. That's not something to worry about. But once again, they're in this Winston bubble, meaning that their team can't heal them. Weemat goes down to 130 HP now. And now they're backing up. Now they're scared. They're trying to get back to safety, but the Winston is juggling them. Their HP is precariously low. In a desperation move, Weemat tries to shatter the Winston, but he jumps over the shatter. And Weemat dies pretty quickly. So if I'm just going to run through this clip one more time. And I'm going to suggest alternative actions that Weemat could have taken. The fight looks like it's going in your favor. You charge the D.Va. That's nice. You're about to demech her. All good so far. Okay, now, at this point you demech the D.Va. You need to start reassessing your environment, because the baby D.Va is not a threat. She can be killed anyways, at your own comfort. But there is a soldier still alive who has killed two of your teammates. You should be periodically, as Rein, just thinking about what's going on behind me, what's the environment like, do I need to push forward, do I need to come back, what state are my teammates in. But Weemat doesn't really do that. They kind of tunnel on killing this D.Va. And as they rush to kill this baby D.Va, they actually eat a lot of shots from the bunny blaster, taking them down to 209 HP. Again, like I said, the baby D.Va is not a threat, so you don't need to aggressively try and chase her like this, especially when you're not holding your shield up. So Weemat takes way too much damage here. Then, again, he makes another sin, which is just to turn around and turn his back to what's going on. He's looking really hard for this Winston, who was 1 HP, so there's really no need to tunnel on him so hard. Your teammates can take care of that. As Rein, you should be thinking of shielding the angles, once again, protecting your team. And what you should be doing is sort of making sure that the area is safe rather than trying to chase kills. And again, as the Winston does drop his bubble, Weemat should at this point know that they shouldn't charge, because the bubble's just gone down. That means they're cut off from healing. But instead they make sort of impetuous decision, which happens to all of us. I call it Rein fever, which is that when you're playing Rein, you tend to get a little bit bloodthirsty just because of the pure damage that he can do. But the charge misses, and now Weemat's down to 100 HP, and the rest of the enemy team is coming in now, and they're going to wipe the fight. And that fight slips away from Weemat's team, and so does that round. So in this second round, Weemat makes a decision to switch to Orisa, which works out well for his team. Of the 3 maps on Lijiang, this is probably the only one I would say you can get away with playing Orisa, and I'll explain that on the 3rd map, where Weemat is actually forced to switch off Orisa. But on this second map, it works well for his team. They win this round quite comfortably, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, like I said, because I've just done an Orisa video. So same principles of shield management and where you're shielding should apply, but there is a couple things I'll just mention. So just one small thing that I want to focus on in Weemat's Orisa play is the fact that they don't put their shield down before they start engaging in a fight. and that'll come to punish them a couple times in this round. So here we see the enemy team is coming in from this direction. Weemat ideally should have already been with the rest of his team. He's poking on the bridge for a little bit too long. He should be here with his team. But as the enemy team pushes in, Weemat takes a long time to put their shield down. So you can see here they're firing. Finally they put their shield down. All that time they could have put a shield down already, and by now they would have probably been almost there towards their next shield. Instead they put the shield down very late. The diva drops her bomb, and in a panic now Weemat is not really sure where to go. They get booped by the Winston and they die. In this scenario, if they had thrown their shield out right now, by the time that the diva actually bombs, they would have had their shield. And even when the diva does bomb, what they should have done, and I'll show you in a second, is when this bomb comes in, and you'll see in a second, at this point they need to go around this corner and fortify, because fortify reduces the amount of damage you take. So even if you do get hit by the diva bomb, there's a chance that the fortify saves you. And not to mention, as does happen with him, he gets booped by this Winston over here, and of course if you're fortifying you can't get booped, so you probably comfortably make it into this corner. But again, a little bit of shield mismanagement and a little bit of fortify mismanagement leads to Weemat dying. Now one thing I do want to talk about, and this is something that would have applied to Weemat in the previous game as well, is when to kill a Winston. So you're going to see here they're going to kill this Winston really easily, and I'm going to try and explain why. So as Weemat is regrouping here, you're going to hear in a second the sound cue of a Winston jumping in. I'll just turn up the volume so you can. So you heard there, the Winston has now jumped in. Weemat's team has all turned to face him, and Winston has now made a big mistake, which is that they've gone way far away from their team and they've used all their cooldowns. So here's a tip, and this will apply in the next round, because Weemat is also going to switch to Winston in the next round. When you're playing Winston, you have to manage your cooldowns as effectively as you can. If you use your cooldowns and you're in a bad position, you're going to die. As Winston, the jump is a great mobility, but you ideally don't want to use it unless you have to. Because while it's great to engage, it's also the only tool you have to actually escape if you're in a bad position. So this Winston here, the mistake he makes is that he commits straight into the back line. Now that he's dropped his bubble, he's used his jump, he's got no way out. Weemat's team really easily deals with him. They spam him down really easily, because you can see he turns and he's trying to look for some sort of escape, but because he's used his jump he has no way out. And as if you're the enemy team playing against a Winston, wait for their cooldowns. If you hear him jump, that's the time to attack him, because he has no way out. The only thing he has then is a bubble, and if they've used their bubble, then they're absolutely a sitting duck. They're waiting to be pounced upon. So as I resume this clip now, Weemat's team have lost the fight in between. They have taken the point to 96%, so they only need to win it once now. And again, I just want to talk about the minor mistake of not putting your shield down first. So Weemat's team are trying to come in from the right. The enemy team have a Mei and a Junkrat, so they're trying to hold this thick choke. And Weemat's Roadhog lands a nice hook. But what happens is that Weemat gets spammed down by the Junkrat and dies, because they didn't put their shield down immediately. So you see here, as they're approaching this point, they need to put their shield down now. They can see exactly what's going on. This is a great area for their team to fight from. So they need to put their shield down so that their Roadhog can spam without fear. But instead they get a bit too caught on trying to shoot, and by the time they actually realize what's going on, the Junkrat launches 3 nades into them, and Weemat dies. So again, a simple error of not putting your shield down first. If you're Orisa, put your shield down before you do any shooting or orbing. So Weemat does get res. His team pushes in, and you're going to see here the enemy Winston makes the same exact mistake. They jump into the back line, they've used their bubble, and now they're easy prey for the Reaper. Now here, Weemat does the absolute right thing. So if I take it back, you'll see here that the Diva Bomb is about to come in. Weemat has just used their shield, so they have no way of protecting themselves. So they run straight for the nearest corner, they fortify, and you can see as a consequence of them fortifying, they actually survive the Diva Bomb. If they hadn't fortified, they would have died. They survive, their Mercy heals them up, get some nice ult charge. His team pushes in, and they win this fight, and they win the point. So now moving on to the third and final control round. Weemat is going to start off playing Orisa, but is going to switch about halfway through. And I think the reason for that is that Orisa is a lot harder to play on this round. And if I just go into the top-down view, I'll try and explain to you why that is. So Lijiang Tower has three different maps. One is the control center, one is the gardens, and one is the night market. Now of the three, gardens is probably the only one where you can actually play Orisa, and the reason for that is as follows. When you're playing on gardens, there's only really two places that the enemy team can come from. Over the bridge, or over this room here. So when you're playing Orisa, you have quite a nice angle to cover, which is that you can put a shield here, and you can see the enemy team. Or if they're trying to come from this way, you can put your shield here or here. And that kind of blocks out all the enemy angles. And that makes for quite a comfortable hold as Orisa, because even then your static shield can still be covering a good angle. Of course, it's a lot harder to retake as Orisa because your shield can't move as easily. But for most of that round, Weemat's team were in control, so it made it easy for them to just hold these angles. However, on control tower, as Weemat found with Rein, the angles are too much. You can play Rein because his shield moves around a lot quicker. So he can hold this room, you can hold this angle, you can hold this angle, you can hold this angle. But you need to be moving really, really quickly. At any point the team can come and you need to back from there to here. Whereas with Orisa, in that 8 seconds that you put your shield down here, that's too long if the enemy team come push. There's too many angles, too many flank routes. So it's very, very difficult to play Orisa on control tower unless you specifically set your team up for that reason. And same applies on night market, because although you have this choke here and this choke here that you could hold, if the enemy team does come in, you're suddenly left with this large open square, and then suddenly you're stuck as Orisa. What angle do I hold? Do I hold here? Do I hold here? Do I hold here? Do I try to turtle up in this corner? If you do try and stick in a corner, it's very easy for the enemy team to just collapse on that corner. And if you do try and stick on these edges, you run the risk of any sort of boopable character, a Lucio, a Pharah coming in and just knocking you off the edge. So again, Weemat's going to find it very hard to play Orisa because the map is too open, there's too much of an area to cover, and Orisa's shields are too slow to move around. So I'll only show you two quick examples of what I mean by making it hard for Orisa to play. So you can see as this fight breaks out, everybody's moving everywhere. Weemat is constantly forced to adjust their angle, adjust their position. Now that they put their shield here, they can't get on point. By the time they finally do move to point, the enemy team already caps it. You see Weemat is forced to put the shield down there, which means they can't go onto the point. When they go to point, the point is capped, they don't have shield, and they die quite easily as a consequence. So again, it's very difficult to play Orisa when you're having to move your shield around so much, so quickly. And here, Weemat's team does manage to take the point, and they try and set up forwards with the Orisa shield. And this is a nice angle you want to hold ideally. If I just pause it 1 second. This is a nice angle you do want to hold, but as you can see quite easily the Pharah comes out of this way, and already she's on top of the Orisa shield. There's also this angle here which is very easy to go around, and you're going to see the Hanzo comes and pressures Weemat and forces him back onto the point. So once again, there you go, there's the Hanzo. So once again, it's far too much movement on this map for Orisa to work successfully. That's a nice play from Weemat here. So the Pharah tries to barrage. You'll see Weemat does the right thing, which is to fortify and then fire. So the fortify sort of saves his HP. He manages to headshot the Pharah enough times. His team wins this fight. But a little minor mistake I just want to point out here. Supercharger dropped. This is the right time to use a supercharger theoretically. However, you shouldn't supercharger until you have your shield up. You can see here, Weemat still has another 3 seconds for their shield to go up. And as a consequence, the enemy diva dives the supercharger really easily, and it dies very, very quickly. So that supercharger was almost entirely wasted. If you supercharger and then put your shield over it, suddenly it's got this huge layer of protection, and the enemy team has to commit very hard just to kill it. Particularly if you then body block, because you've got your own body and the shield, which is about 1300 HP to protect the supercharger, which is too much for the enemy team to break down. So I'm just going to fast forward that fight. Weemat's team wins, but they're going to lose this next fight for a little bit of tunneling from Weemat, and a little bit of a rookie mistake there. So if we take it back, Weemat is too focused on killing, I'm not sure who this is, but whoever this is, they're really focused on trying to kill this character. So you can see here they're halting, they're really tunneled. But at this range, you're never going to kill someone as Orisa. You just don't have enough damage potential. So trying to spam and focus on someone at this far out is just a waste of your time. To the right of the screen, you can't see it, but the rest of the fight has begun. And Weemat is forced to run away really quickly when this D.Va bomb comes in. Of course, they should just put a shield here, but because they're out of position, because they're panicking, they just sort of, they eat the D.Va bomb really. So that again comes from the fact that Weemat is tunneled too hard. I just take it back. They're tunneled too hard. They're not watching the fight going on to the right of them. So as main tank, you can't tunnel that hard on an enemy player who's so far away. You have to be aware of your surroundings, and that's the most important thing. So Weemat now goes back to spawn, switches to Winston, which is, I think is the right decision to switch from Orisa at this point, which leaves you with two choices. You're either going to play Rein or you're going to play Winston. Perhaps looking in their team comp, which is with a McCree Roadhog, you would have been better off playing Rein, because as you'll see here, Weemat's team does struggle to actually get through this choke, and a Rein shield would have helped. But Winston is still better than Orisa. And I'll just quickly talk about the same thing that I talked about with the enemy Winston, which is you have to efficiently use your cooldowns. You can see there the Reaper dies because there's too much spam at the choke, and there's no shield to protect Weemat's team. But when you are playing Winston, you need to manage your cooldowns, and I'll show you an example of what I mean by that. So fast forward a couple seconds, the Reaper gets rezzed, and Weemat sees this D.Va here, and they're going to dive at this D.Va, and this is definitely a mistake. Because you see here, he's now committed to this D.Va, who then flies. She could have flown away, first of all, which would have left Weemat in an awful position. But second of all, as Winston, diving the enemy D.Va is going to get you absolutely nothing. Look at her gigantic health pool. Even though Weemat dived and is now zapping her, she's barely been scratched. Now, he's without cooldowns, he's used his bubble. His team is without a main tank. And his bubble gets destroyed very quickly. So now Weemat is forced to aimlessly sort of poke around the edges of the point because they misuse their cooldowns. His team's engage doesn't go very well. The fire destroys them. And now Weemat's forced to back out. So now we're going to move into the final fight. And as I let this clip play here, you see again, Weemat is focused a little bit too much on the D.Va. There's no point chasing a D.Va as a Winston unless she's the only person left or your team is focusing her as a collective, because you're never going to kill her in any amount of time that's worthwhile. So the rest of his team is moving in and they're getting some kills, but as they've moved on to the point, Weemat is not there. Weemat is not there to follow with his team. So now to catch up, he uses his jump again. Like I said, you don't want to use your jump unless you have to as Winston, because now Weemat is 4 seconds till jump and 4 seconds to shield, meaning he's just a sitting monkey, as it were, and he's just forced to poke now aimlessly at the Rein. And you're going to see, I'm just going to let this clip play, you're going to see something quite unfortunate happen, because I'm almost certain this is accidental synergy. So that huge shatter into D.Va bomb play wipes Weemat's team. Again, I'm almost 100% that this is accidental. And this is unfortunate, these kind of things occur. But I'm going to suggest what Weemat could have done, and maybe that would have been avoided. So first mistake is using this jump to just cover what is essentially a couple steps, because Weemat can just walk around this corner and they'll be at the same spot they were otherwise. So now you're without jump, you're without shield, and then second of all, if you're poking an enemy Rein, what you should be doing as Winston is trying to be a nuisance. So ideally, if you're going to poke a Rein, you want to poke them from an alternate angle to what the rest of your team is doing. So your Roadhog does the right thing, which is he's behind the Rein. So as Winston, you can see here a McCree shot trailing into the Rein shield. So as Winston, you should be trying to come in around the shield, because while the Rein is holding the shield, he's just forced to stand there and take as much punishment as you can, and your Tesla cannon goes through his shield. But instead, Weemat kind of walks right in, and now they're in no man's land. They're not behind the cover that they were a second ago. The rest of their team is here in the open, and they're not at an alternate angle to the Reinhardt. See, the Reinhardt has this big window now into all of Weemat's team. So he should be ideally here. Or if they had their jump, what I'm going to suggest they should have done is jump this Hanzo here. This Hanzo's completely exposed. He's on his own. he's the perfect target for a Winston to dive and kill quite easily. So if Weemat had his cooldowns, he jumps here at this Hanzo, he bubbles on top of him, and then he does the bubble poke, which is to stand at the edge of your bubble and just zap the Hanzo. Hanzo dies. The Rein doesn't have as easy a shatter to shatter 3 people. And Weemat's team probably has a much better shot there. Instead, unfortunately, Weemat's a little bit out in the open, they get shattered, they get the accidental Diva Bomb, and he loses this match. And that's all I really got for today, guys. I want to again thank Weemat for submitting their video. And Weemat, I think your game sense is actually pretty good. You understood when the hero picks had to come in. You switched from Rein to Orisa, and when the Orisa wasn't working, you switched from Orisa to Winston. So I think your natural intuition as tank is there. I would suggest you just try and think a little bit more when you're playing Rein and playing Orisa about where you're covering your shields, what angles you're covering. And again, just watch out with the enemy Winston. When you're coming up against Winston, think about their cooldowns and think about their bubbles. Stay away from their bubbles and watch for their cooldowns. The minute they use their jump and their bubble, that's the time to go in, that's the time to focus them down. And just try and focus a little bit more on your health, keep a little bit more awareness of your surroundings. I think you'll do much better. I'm sure you'll climb the ranks in no time. So there we have it, guys. That was another VOD review. I'm SVB, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do, please hit the like, subscribe, and share buttons, just so I know that you guys are enjoying the content. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon.